We began the program with Chris Bramwell, our deputy editor, looking at the events of today. Well, opponents of the Greens are using the party's disarray in the last 24 hours to twist the knife. Let's look at that now. The Greens caucus met this morning to thrash things out after two MPs went public about their loss of confidence in the leadership of Matiria Ture after her benefit fraud. Kennedy Graham and David Clendon will stay on as Green MPs until the election but won't participate in caucus activities or campaigning. They will not seek re-election for the Greens in September. Here is our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Last night, the Green Party co-leader James Shaw wanted to suspend the two MPs from caucus and have them thrown out of the party altogether. He says after sleeping on it, he changed his mind today and an agreement has now been reached among caucus members. The New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters was asked how he'd deal with an MP who'd committed benefit fraud.
The last time I had a Member of Parliament did something like that, I fired him right out of Parliament.
So would you expect Matiria Ture to resign?
No, you're going to ask that party's organisation. I'm talking about mine now.
The Prime Minister, Bill English, says the left side of politics is a mess and he was keen to name-check Labour as well.
Well, Labour and the Greens are joined at the hip and I imagine it's a real concern, and it looks like with the turmoil on the left, Labour might have to take a view about Matiria Ture. I think that's a question Ms Ardern will have to answer about whether Labour wants to stay joined at the hip with the Greens.
Do you understand the actions of these two MPs, that they felt that they couldn't work alongside somebody who admitted to welfare fraud?
Well, look, they've made their statement, which I think a lot of people would be able to understand.
The Labour leader Jacinda Ardern, who's now been at the helm for a week, says the memorandum of understanding between Labour and the Greens remains intact, but she stands by her decision to rule Mrs Ture out of a ministerial position in any Labour-Greens government last Friday, regardless of what's happened since. She says she's only responsible for what happens in Labour.
Ultimately, I can only control what is within my power, and as I said in my very first press conference, I'm going to be focused on Labour's issues. One party is quite sufficient for me, and ultimately voters will decide the makeup of government. They'll decide who they place their vote with. A conversation about other parties or the makeup of a possible alternative government, I think, distracts from our ability to talk about those issues.
The leader of the Opportunities Party, Gareth Morgan, says he'd welcome Kennedy Graham and David Clendon as candidates for his party.
Because I think they've both got fantastic track records. They're clearly people of principle. And, yeah, I mean, I think any party who has got, issues of social justice and environment at their heart, which, we definitely have, would be proud to have those guys.
And he backs the stance of the two MPs.
To stand up and say, this is not good, what's happening, Matiria, and it's either you or us. I think that's the right thing to do. So I think she's way out of line, and they're right, she should have gone.
The ACT leader David Seymour has been one of the fiercest critics of Mrs Ture and the Greens.
Kennedy Graham and David Clendon have shown they've got some real principle. James Shaw has been made to look as weak as a Green Party herbal tea, and the real disappointment is Matiria Ture, who has exploited and let down the struggling solo mums that she purports to be supporting.
How's she exploited and let them down?
Oh, she's claimed that she was doing it hard when the reality is she was breaking the law, standing for Parliament.
Matiria Ture is not resiling from any of her statements.
What I've said is I will not condemn people who have had to do the same thing I did. And that's because I can't possibly condemn them and accept my own history. I want to change the system so that nobody ever has to lie to win.
Mrs Ture says she now goes into the election with the full backing of the caucus and her party, a caucus that effectively has two fewer MPs and a perception of party division it will need to work hard to repair. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.